And now, two guys who survived running with scissors, Aaron and Jonathan.
Howdy, and welcome to episode 85 of In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. In this episode, we discuss the revolution, John Stossel's mustache, and the Middle East. We're your hosts, Aaron
and Jonathan.
And you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Today's show is sponsored by Cat's Coffee. If you're looking for truly exceptional coffee to help you survive the morning or the next zombie apocalypse, you need to be drinking Cat's. They specialize in the finest coffee from sources that prioritize environmental responsibility and are fair trade certified. Their goal is to achieve perfection in every cup. Check them out at Cat's, K-A-T-Z as in zebra, coffee.com, or click on their bright green banner on the site and make sure you're dealing with an official sponsor of the show. Again, that's Cat's, K-A-T-Z as in zebra, coffee.com. Today we're going to talk about the revolution, and not the revolution that you may think we're going to talk about. Actually, we are going to talk about the TV show. I want to make that very clear. We're talking about the TV show Revolution that is now on NBC. Which, first I want to say I'm actually very disappointed it's on NBC because they've really managed to piss me off with the whole 9/11 Kardashian boob job, hair job, whatever it was. They had the Kardashians on talking about why anybody thinks the Kardashians are worth spending any amount of time listening to.
You mean you don't find the Kardashian opinion on 9/11 or other world topics to be relevant?
Well, even if she had, if they had had the Kardashians on to talk about how it affected their hair that day, it would that would still really bother me too. But I didn't even watch it, but just getting the gist of what was going on with it and reading the bullet points from it, it had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11, and that they chose to air that in the middle of in the middle of a moment of silence. It's just like, oh my God, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah,
but I mean that
sensationalism in the media has just become a real problem these days.
It has, and then this raises an interesting debate that we'll get to a little later in the program about the place of media and what their responsibility is as far as giving us the information we need. But at the same time, they are a business, and that is one of the weird little drawbacks sometimes of capitalism. And I'll admit that sometimes, but I think that's the right of humanity. If you, since we're libertarians, if you want to be an idiot and consume junk, then that's your business. But I don't know. There's a time and a place where you just take some responsibility and not say, you know what, we're going to give you junk food today, to actually stop and go, you know what, if that's what you want, go read Us Weekly or something and just don't watch TV for the next hour.
I don't remember whether I said this in the episode before last or not, but during the DNC, during the Democratic National Convention, and again, you know our political stance. I am not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. But when the President of the United States is giving a speech, whether you like him or not, I would recommend at least watching or at least getting some information about it. Just a recommendation. In this country, Honey Boo Boo, for those of you who don't know who Honey Boo Boo is, apparently is a TV show on the Learning Channel. And I think it is actually on the Learning Channel. I could be wrong about that. It might be on Nat Geo. About a little girl and her ridiculous redneck family and how she's in beauty pageants and such. She had twice the viewers of the President of the United States.
I didn't know that.
Yes, twice the viewers. And while I appreciate that from a ironic point of view, I find that mildly to extremely disturbing.
I'm going to go with extremely disturbing.
So, for those of you who watched Honey Boo Boo instead of the president, I hope you enjoyed it. Assuming you are listening to our show, I highly doubt it. I mean, I would imagine most of our listener base is still saying, Who the hell is Honey Boo Boo?
I'm sitting here saying, who the hell is Honey Boo Boo? And I'm trying to figure out why you know who Honey Boo Boo is.
I only know because I saw the media report on Honey Boo Boo, so I felt the need to look it up.
Oh.
Just in the mere act of looking it up, I believe that I lost possibly 5 to 10% of all my brain cells.
I think I've lost 2% just hearing you talk about it. So let's get back to Revolution, the TV show, which for survivalists, I mean, it's obviously going to be an exciting topic because let's face it, even though most of us try to talk about being positive and being optimists or, you know, in some cases opportunists, there is something about watching or reading dystopian storylines that really does appeal to us. And I think in some way we think maybe I'm going to learn something from it or, you know, it's just, I don't know. It's relevant to our lives and relevant to our thought processes, so we watch it. And in true NBC4, but I'll first say that it's an awful show. I mean, it's good from an entertainment value show, but if you think you're going to learn anything from it or if it's going to be a good, accurate portrayal of what society would be like after some sort of electrical grid collapse or just societal collapse in general, I think it's a pretty awful representation.
Yes, I think it's kind of like the show Friends. If you thought that Friends was a good model for how you should set up your social circle and how you could possibly live in New York City, then that is what Revolution is to survival.
Yeah. That is very good. Those are very good connections to draw. But yeah, I liked how everyone in the TV show is perfectly clean.
Oh, yeah.
And have brand new clothes. Yep. And look well fed. And the muskets, as you and I were joking about in the beginning, I'm trying not to drop an F-bomb here, but where the heck did muskets come from all of a sudden in the middle of the show?
I don't know. Musket, like if you actually look at black powder rifles, they can get kind of expensive, and I don't know that many people with black powder rifles. So it's like, I mean, if I had to think of what rifle would be available, obviously from the other points in the show, semi-automatic weapons are still available, and there's appears to still be ammunition for them because the guy shoots his.
And of course, it's a Desert Eagle.
Well, yeah, of course, it's a Desert Eagle with the most probably a 50 caliber Desert Eagle or something ridiculous like that. You know, one with lots of ammo laying around.
Oh yeah.
But like muskets, right? And I get the concept, right? So muskets, theoretically, if machines weren't around, you could easily make musket ammunition still. And I guess you could still make black powder without machinery.
Yeah.
So all that makes sense. But with the amount of, I mean, these are supposed to be guys who are coming off of military bases and stuff. You'd think they'd have a ton of stockpiled 5.56 and.
Well, we're also only talking about, I think they laid out the timeline as being 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years.
After the collapse. Like that's when the story picks back up, is 15 years later that they're showing you this society, what society has sprung up around it. And of course, that's obviously not what the storyline is about at its core, but that's what they're portraying and showing. And so, yeah, the muskets were, if they had placed it 50 years in the future or something, where I guess we have run out of ammunition or ammunition in center cartridge fashion has truly, we've depleted our supplies and we've not been able to reboot society to the point of being able to produce centerfire rounds anymore, that would make sense. But we're only talking 15 years. I mean, unless there was just some giant firefight, and I really don't see that as being a reasonable explanation. I don't see that as being a real thing. I mean, even for civilians. I mean, if society collapses tomorrow, I'm going to be really careful with when and how and at what I'm pulling a trigger.
Right. Because
I don't know when I'm going to get more. And that was a funny thing. I mean, it's just, you're like, what? So the use of bows and arrows were interesting, but I've got to point this out. If people don't go flying back when they get shot with normal small caliber weapons, why would they go flying backwards if they got shot with an arrow? From a recurve bow. Yeah.
Jump away.
No, it's like they like go flying back. Like
I'm going with it just hurt so much that their bodies just jumped backwards.
All right. I'll go
That's
with
my
that.
logic.
That's your logic.
I know that I'm interpreting what I watched, and I'm changing it slightly, but I have to, in my head, I have to rationalize it that way in order to continue watching the show.
I understand, and I do appreciate that. And I think I may have to adopt that mindset. Although the show is actually pretty good, and it seems like they're laying it out in a way that will make for an interesting television show that's probably just dark enough for mainstream America to pick up and watch and feel okay watching, and not too scary, as opposed to I'm having a brain fart. What's the other TV show that you and I both watched that where the aliens have attacked us?
Sure, make it hard on me. I don't remember.
It's infectious today, apparently.
It's a great show though. I still enjoy it.
What the hell is that show? You know what? It doesn't even matter. If you probably know what we're talking about, and now I can't even think of what channel it comes on. But basically,
TNT.
Huh? What?
It's on TNT.
TNT. Okay, all right. So that show is actually very
or USA. Gritty. I don't know.
One of the who cares anymore. But that show is actually pretty dark and gritty. But even that is. But I mean, it's aliens involved, so it's going to have quite a few leaps of faith involved in that. I guess this is a little more palatable for people that watch Kardashians instead of stuff about the 9/11. The 9/11. What am I, George Bush today?
Yes, it's all about the 9/11, man.
The 9/11, yeah. Anyway, yeah, but it is an interesting show, and I did pick up the idea of poisoning whiskey and keeping that on hand as an interesting way of dealing with ruffians that try to attack me early in the morning or something.
I thought that was great. That to me was one of the best parts of the show, and the only thing that I'm going to personally learn from in my go bag. There will now be a bottle of poisoned whiskey.
But I think I'm actually going to make mine like poison gin or something because I
already smells like aftershave.
No, just so that I don't drink it. Because if it's whiskey, I might get drunk and accidentally drink it and kill myself.
That's a fine point. And you probably don't want to put a skull and crossbones on it because, well, that would give it away.
Yeah, that might be a dead giveaway. But I'd probably choose some alcohol. And, actually, gin may be the right way to go. Because as you were saying, like, gin already has a terrible smell to it.
Yes.
And
for those of you that like gin, good for you.
I'm going to go with, I don't know how you drink that. I mean, and I've never had cheap gin, so even the expensive stuff I don't understand the allure, but hey, more power to. I mean, we each have we all have our little ways, whatever. We all have our independent tastes. So so I won't be using whiskey to poison to put poison in my go bag because I might accidentally drink it and go, yeah, this is good whiskey.
I think that's a good call. Good call.
Yes.
Do not poison the stuff you enjoy.
Yeah. Yes. Just seems like a bad idea.
Yep.
But,
although they did, they made good use of the recurve bow.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of good use of crossbows and such.
Okay, now, since you've been in the archery world now, maybe you can explain the weird backwards crossbow that the young, bright blue-eyed, blonde-haired, perfectly clean, well-dressed young lady is running around with, and they collapse.
All right, so allow me to explain that as best I can. It looked really cool, so the show used it.
No, I kind of got that, but what the hell is it?
I've never actually seen one.
Okay.
In real life, and I don't know what the benefits of one would be, but my guess, because I've seen a lot of really high-end good crossbows, and they tend not to look like that one.
Yeah.
That they found one that looked kind of different and cool, and they were like, ooh, that looks different and cool. Let's use that for the show.
Yeah. Kind of like I've really gotten into 24 lately, and everybody has these absolutely tiny suppressors.
Yes.
And
just like that.
Just like that.
Kind of like the guy with the recurve bow in Revolution. It's all shiny and the wood is perfectly polished and all that.
Mm-hmm.
If he's been living with it for the last 15 years, learning to use it and all that, you'd think it would look a little better used.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey.
Yeah, except for the one, fat, sloppy, ex-Google executive.
I love that guy, though.
I like that guy, too, but except for him... That looks like an overweight hipster. Everybody else looks like perfectly clean and everything.
Yeah. But apparently he's been very well fed. So when you're well fed, you can't shower as much.
Evidently. Or trim your beard or shave or anything like that.
He's an ex-Google employee, man. He's still all about the Unix.
He did look like a Unix guy, except he wasn't wearing a Hawaiian t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
And to any Unix guys out there that we've offended, you do that.
Exactly. So. Have a beard, and you know it. And it's not a survival beard, let's face it.
You know, we do actually have somebody on the forum now that has taken the name Survival Beard. I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I keep meaning to point the guy to the thread we have going that I don't think anybody's replied to in a while. But there was an entire thread in the Rabbit Hole forum about the legitimacy and the benefits of a survival beard. And it was a serious conversation. I think I was the only person making jokes, and I excused myself because obviously they were having a legitimate conversation, and all I was going to do was make jokes.
I'm glad you excused yourself to allow the adults to speak.
I try to. I try to at least acknowledge that sometimes I am a juvenile delinquent, even when I'm supposed to be the adult in the room.
I'm always a juvenile delinquent.
We excel at that. We genuinely excel at that. So now that we've beat up the TV show and made fun of it, and we've hinted at the idea of talking about media and what we're consuming and what is the value of it, alluded to last week that we would talk about what's going on in the Middle East. And I think you're going to get an interesting perspective out of this today, and probably not the one you think we'd be talking about. And actually, what we're going to focus on is not just the current events and not crazy conspiracy theories, although we are going to go into those a little bit because they're fun, but really about the information that we're consuming. Let's first start off with, if for some reason you're living under a rock or something, the Middle East is on fire again. At first, our current United States administration, their stance was that this was all about a movie, that some guy that may or may not be a meth dealer, which was news to me. Jonathan, you shared that part of news today with me, that when I saw, he was like an old man or something when I saw a picture.
But he was a meth dealer.
Oh,
not
he was?
Still a meth. Apparently, he was on probation when he made the movie. Again, it gets so convoluted. It really doesn't matter, I think, is the point of all of it. It's who cares who made the movie.
Yeah.
This country right here, the one we live in and the majority of our listeners live in, is all about freedom of speech. And if you don't like something, you're welcome to say whatever you want about it. And if I don't like what you're saying, I'm welcome to not listen.
Or have an opposing view.
Or I can make my own movie. Exactly. I can make my own movie. I could do a podcast. I could
True.
have a million ways to handle speech against speech. But and I don't know who said it first. I've heard it many times on shows like John Stossel and such. And I'm going to say it right now. We'll just get it started, and I'll probably use it multiple times. Words are words, and bullets are bullets. And you use words to combat words. You do not use bullets to combat words. And that's where I think what's going on in the Middle East is kind of insane. But
well, and that brings up, and herein lies the problem with the information we're given, depending on where you're getting your news from. If you get your news from one spot, then they're still hung up, or actually I think they're starting to walk back, as the administration is starting to walk back this very hard line they took, that it was a spontaneous protest, that there was nothing weird, nothing to see here, folks, nothing out of the ordinary. And then other outlets were saying, no, there's something really hinky going on here. This doesn't all add up. This looks like a planned attack. The movie was released in June. It's kind of weird that it just happens to, on the anniversary of 9/11, that this terrorist attack happens on 9/11. And so they start laying it out. And if you go further than that, if you go into some of the deeper realms of the internet and television and journalism stuff, you'll actually get that this was, I don't remember exactly what all the details were, but essentially it boiled down to that this was a CIA arms deal gone wrong. And I will even admit that after listening to that argument and seeing those dots connected, I was like, all right, that. I will certainly weigh that into my realm of what I'm trying to figure out this is all about.
Right. But what you just said there is great. I mean, how many different stories are being proposed? How often are they evolving?
Oh, this one especially. Like, I cannot recall in recent memory a story that has been told with this many different details and viewpoints by this many different media outlets.
Oh, yeah. No, it's it rivals any major event. And that's one of the things you and I talked about before starting to record and such, was what we find is anytime there's a major event or a disaster, or it doesn't really matter what it is, everybody has an opinion before the data is available. And so everybody comes out with a statement. Everybody's got an opinion. Then data starts becoming available. And then, it's easy for people who are good at it to paint all kinds of stories. I mean, when I only have 50% or even 60% or even 80% of the data, it is easy to paint a ton of different stories of possibility. And then what happens is, as more and more data comes back, like you were talking about, people start backpedaling. So the administration's kind of backpedaling on the original story. Now, well, it was a terrorist attack. It probably was planned. But all that comes with data. And the interesting part is this happens for everything. It doesn't matter what the disaster is or what the attack is or what it might be. If it's a hurricane, all the media outlets, it doesn't matter whether it's a tropical storm or a Category 5 hurricane. When you first hear about it, they're all Category 5 hurricanes. I mean, Aaron, you get this every single year, and I did too up until recently. Every time there was a hurricane coming towards the Gulf, it didn't even matter whether it was going to hit the Gulf or not. If it was coming towards the Gulf, it was Category 5, it was catastrophic, the world needed to panic, and Houston was going to be underwater. And then as it got closer, okay, maybe it's going to New Orleans. Maybe it's going to Mexico. Maybe it's not even going to hit the Gulf and it's going to hit Florida. And then, if it does do one of those things, it could be potentially tragic, but the story changes, it evolves constantly. So how do those of us who want to prep and be prepared for anything take data, use it, and rationally move forward with our plans? And I think that's really what we wanted to cover here more than anything else.
Yeah, and just how do we get information and what do we do with that information is also where we're going with it, obviously.
Yep, and I mean, I know I find it personally frustrating when it's very difficult to take the outlets that you trust and actually trust them when they're all about sensationalism. And you've brought it up, Aaron. The media, it's business.
Uh-huh.
These guys are all about being a business, and they want to drive eyeballs to the screen so that they can drive more eyeballs to the ads that they show between showing the news. And that means sensationalism. And it doesn't matter whether it's your favorite channel, and I'm going to go for both ends of the extreme here. It doesn't matter if your favorite channel is Fox News or if your favorite channel is MSNBC. They are both showing you news that's going to drive your eyeballs to their screen in order to drive more eyeballs to the ads being shown. That's what they're doing. That's their intention. That's the plan. That's how it works. That's how the business makes money.
Yeah, they actually refer to the commercials as content and the shows as filler.
Yep.
I mean, that should tell you something about the business model. And that's not to beat them up about it. It's
it's business. I'm all for business.
Yeah, and the difficulty remains in if you want pure news, the problem is you wind up with C-SPAN. And I don't know if you've ever tried to watch.
Twist.
I don't know if you've ever tried to watch C-SPAN. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they've livened it up recently. I don't know. But it is quite possibly one of the most boring channels, unless for some reason you like watching politicians speak to one another. It is quite possibly one of the worst things to just endure. But, and I'll even give another example of, and I'm not taking sides with it. You can kind of extrude your own opinions about what I may or may not think about this. But as from a pure give me information standpoint, I was watching the CNN homepage and the Fox News homepage last week. And all I saw on the homepage as far as between the two different candidates were Romney's comments about the 47%. And nothing about Obama's comments, the audio recordings of him talking about that he supported and believed in redistribution of wealth. If you went to the Fox website, they were actually talking about both, but they were obviously talking more about Obama's than Romney's statements.
Right.
And I'll give this, at least Fox was giving you both. But when I looked at CNN's homepage, it was just, that's all they were giving you. Well, that and an overweight Wiener dog and what this dog was doing to lose weight.
Well, that's very important. We have an obesity problem in this country with Wiener dogs.
We do. It's an epidemic.
We got to get them running more or something. But no, I agree with what you're saying. It's all about, yes, there are more balanced and less balanced. And obviously they know what audience they need to drive in. CNN is having some really dismal ratings lately. And actually, both MSNBC and Fox have higher ratings these days. Fox has the highest of all of them. And again, you know our political stance, so I'm not siding with any particular station. If I'm watching somebody on Fox, it's probably John Stossel, not any of the other guys on there. Maybe a little Cavuto, too, because I like my business news. And I don't know why I'm advertising for them right now.
Well, because those two, as far as you and I go, we do both enjoy those shows. Like, I don't watch Cavuto as much as I'd like, but I do actually watch John Stossel. And while his humor's a little goofy and a little cheesy, it's, I like the content.
He has that giant mustache, and it draws me in every time. And so, but I think what we're both trying to get across here is the media has, when they show these things and they give you headlines, there's an agenda behind it. And all of us are smart enough to know, for most things, how to filter. So, for instance, Aaron and I both, through years of living in a hurricane zone, have learned to filter hurricane news so that we actually can very easily pick up on what's useful and what's not. On the other hand, I'm now living in Austin, which is 180 miles away from Houston. And I still get calls from my parents every time a hurricane is within any distance of the Gulf that makes the news. And it's because they don't have that same hurricane filter that I do. They live up in the Northeast. So every time they hear hurricane, it sounds amazingly tragic.
Well, especially now that a hurricane hit the Northeast, and now everybody in the Northeast has some understanding of that, hey, hurricanes they kind of suck.
Exactly, but without the filter that those of us who deal with it year in and year out have.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all learn to build filters around the news that we pay attention to regularly, I think. But when there's something big that's out of the ordinary, like a real disaster or an unexpected disaster, like to me, if you don't prepare for hurricanes, you're just an idiot if you live in Houston. Okay, I mean, and I'm being harsh there, but the reality is if you live in Houston year in and year out and you don't prepare for hurricanes, then you're just a moron. On the other hand, if you live in Houston and you don't prepare for a blizzard, well, that's perfectly rational to me. On the other hand, if you heard about a blizzard coming and you live in Houston, well, then maybe you should get out and maybe get a shovel.
That's why I have a snowsuit.
That is why you have a snowsuit.
Bright orange.
But I mean, I hope that makes sense to the listeners. It's if you live in the Northeast and you learn to filter blizzard news. But if you live in Houston, anything that sounds remotely like snow, and the whole city shuts down because everybody freaks out. And so we need to learn to put filters around disasters we're not used to and the information that we're not used to getting, like a terrorist attack. And we need to use those same filters that you use for hurricanes in Houston or blizzards in Montana on terrorist attack in wherever it might be. And take the sensational parts of it and strip it out mentally and just try to pick out the facts. Okay, somebody killed somebody. I got that much. It's probably, for instance, the stuff going on in the Middle East is probably not going to impact you in Boise, Idaho, at least not directly. But does that mean you should not, increase your awareness and your being alert because there are terrorist attacks going on in the world? No, I think you should be a little bit more aware, a little bit more alert that it's going on, and maybe it could come to your small town. But it's just creating those filters.
I think that made sense, and I think that is an important thing to understand because we've talked about in the past of having biases. For somebody that really enjoys watching Fox News, MSNBC is about like getting a root canal.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the opinions that are be given out and stuff, it is very hard to watch. But for somebody that watches MSNBC, watching Fox News would be the same reaction.
Oh, yeah. Well, and even to us, I think, Aaron, you and I have both attempted to watch O'Reilly.
I'm sure he's a bright man, but I don't know. Like, O'Reilly is almost everything that's wrong with the world.
Yeah, I can't watch him either. Now, for those of you out there who listen to him and enjoy that, we are not imposing our beliefs in any way on you. What we're just trying to say is, for anything you watch, whether it's MSNBC, wherever you can get your media, and maybe this is it, I'm trying to boil it down. When you've got a disaster of any kind or a major event of any kind, you may not have a control over where you're getting your news source. So you may be in an airport, and at that airport, they might be showing the channel you don't watch, and it might be the commentator that you don't like. But there are ways to pick out the fact and essentially filter out the opinion. And I think most of us are adult enough, intelligent enough to be able to do that as long as we actually pay attention.
And that's a very important point you just made. Pay attention, because it is so easy to sit in front of the television, and we'll take the example of you and I like watching John Stossel. And if you're just sitting there watching him and just blindly taking in everything that he's saying as gospel because you like the guy, or you like his mustache, or you like that the fact that he still has cool hair at, what is he, like a million years old?
Exactly. Don't knock the mustache, though, man.
But he's still got cool hair at his age. I mean, that's awesome. But
he actually transplants it from his mustache to the top of his head.
I'm going to try that. But the point being, if you're just blindly listening and watching and saying, I like this guy, then or woman or whoever, then you're missing out on making your own judgments and your own decisions, and you're relying completely on somebody else to give you their opinion of what's going on in the world. And it's being lazy. And I've got to say, staying on the Stossel example, I've watched John Stossel, and I've watched the whole thing through, and I've gone, yeah, and I've gotten kind of revved up about it. I mean, not that his show's easy to get revved up about, because he's just not a very enthusiastic guy. He's not like impassioned hell and brimstone kind of guy. But you get done watching it and you go, wait a minute, that one thing, yeah, I get what you're saying, but there's more nuances to it than that. I mean, you can't make that a hard, fast rule.
Right.
And inherently, I mean, but that's the thing. You get, you get 3 libertarians in a room and you're going to get 10 different opinions about something.
Yeah, it's like rabbis.
Yeah, exactly. But that, that's their job. Libertarians were just obstinate jerks, even with our own thought processes. But I think the point is, like, it's so easy to just sit there and consume it and not pay attention. And that's one of the things that, as preppers and people that can want to be informed, we have to do. And in a lot of cases, you have to also get your news from places that you cannot stand, just so that you have some idea of other opinions and other pieces of information. So if you were just looking at CNN, you might miss half the story, or you might miss half the other opinions coming out. Or if it was MSNBC, you'd only get half of the opinions. And it's not just politics, it's everything going on in the world. Everything. Doesn't matter what it is. Because on one hand, MSNBC may be talking about how we're having an epidemic of fat wiener dogs. And Fox may be saying, no, we're having this epidemic of fat wiener dogs, but it's not that these animals are innately fat. It's because their owners keep feeding them Crisco. I don't know.
Right. No, and that's, you know what? I remember it from high school. And maybe this is going to ring true with a lot of you. You probably heard the same thing.
Eating Crisco is a bad idea.
Critical reading or critical review, that idea of taking the information in, but truly being critical of all of it. Doesn't matter whether you agree with it or disagree with it. And understanding which piece of it, again, going back to opinion versus fact, and understand when you're only getting half a story. Like you said, wiener dogs are fat because we're feeding them Crisco is a different story than wiener dogs are fat.
Yes.
And I mean, there is a very different story there, right? We're feeding them Crisco says, okay, stop feeding them Crisco and they won't be fat anymore. Wiener dogs are fat could be that, well, they were born fat. They'll die fat. They're just fat.
Yeah. Some goofy breeder decided we needed fat wiener dogs. And so they're breeding this strange strain of fat wiener dogs.
Feed them nothing but 1 peanut a day and they're still fat. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But those are different stories. And I think that's where I think a lot of people, and maybe it comes from watching too much quote unquote reality TV, where we take everything as real, as fact, because it was on TV. Somebody told it to us or we saw it on TV, so it must be a real thing. I know people who watch shows like Real Housewives and of whatever and all that stuff. And sometimes I think it's hard to separate the fact that, while those are real people, because all actors and actresses are real people, except for cartoon ones, they are playing a character for a show in order to sell airtime. I mean, that's really what it all comes down to. And it's the same thing for the media. They're telling you a story, or they're putting a story around something that's going to draw in a specific audience to sell airtime.
Yeah, I'll tell you this from personal experience as far as reality TV goes. Like, we have been approached for a survival reality TV show, and that we didn't get very involved in. It was pretty quick. We were just like, no, this is stupid, and we have no reason to be involved in it. We don't need to make a buck that bad. And then my family's business also has been approached a bunch of times about having a reality show about it. And so I've started to understand and get a lot of information about reality shows. And it is quite amazing how much of it is staged because, let's face it, no matter how freaking crazy your family is, and trust me, mine is just bananas. All of our families are bananas. And so for TV, you have to kind of amp that up and you have to make some things bigger than necessarily they might have actually been.
Yeah. Think about your own life. All of you out there, think about your own lives. You may think I live a crazy life, and it's even the crazy stuff that goes on in your life is what, 1% of your day? The other 99% is pretty daily mundane stuff. So obviously, even if they were to show that 1%, it wouldn't really show reality. It would just show the 1%.
And that's another issue that we can come to about as far as media goes. They're going to hype things up. Like we said, they've got to get you interested. They've got to get you paying attention. And the news, for the most part, all by itself can genuinely be pretty boring. And as far as that 1%, that's another great example we can point out. In Houston, whenever there's flooding or anything like that, the news crews will go out to the one underpass, unless it's one of the really serious floods that really does affect the whole city. But every time there's any kind of heavy rain, the media is out and they're showing you the one underpass in the city that is underwater, that is just badly designed and does nothing, but is basically a retention pond. And they're showing you every moron that just drove right into the water. The rest of the city could quite frankly just be damp and there's no real flooding anywhere else. But if you're just watching the news and not paying attention and all you see is that 1% picture, then you might think, if you were not actually in Houston, you might think that the entire city is underwater and devastated. And oh my God, it's the next Atlantis. How these people must have gills.
Yes, of course we do.
Well, we kind of do. Although you must be losing your gills now that you live in a more arid area. So
that's fantastic.
Your gills are drying out, which I think I did shout quite a few times last time I was in Arizona. But yeah, and that's, a lot of times when we see the pictures on the news, if you'll notice, it's usually the same picture from a couple of different angles. Over and over, or the same footage over and over and over again, and you get very little idea of what does the rest of the area look like until they actually bring out the helicopter. When they bring out the helicopter to survey an area, you're like, oh, okay, this is bad.
Right, it means they couldn't get their trucks in there.
Yeah. Well, not only that, now they've got a big enough picture that they can really show you, look, the entire place is underwater or under snow or is being attacked by snowmen. I don't know, something. Mm-hmm. So, or fat wiener dogs, whatever the problem is. Fat wiener dogs rolling down the street. So that's another thing that we have to watch out for is the picture that we're being presented and is the video feeds that were being presented, are they the 1% of what's actually going on there? Or really, are they the big wide-angle helicopter bird's eye view of what's going on? Or how bad is it really?
Right. And you know what? Just taking that full circle back to where we started with all this, that idea of that 1%, bad things happen in the Middle East. We're seeing things in Egypt occurring, Syria, all over, really. And you have to ask yourself, and obviously we don't know. I don't have a clear understanding of it because I can't generate my own pictures. But are the pictures we're seeing of the 1%, or are the pictures we're seeing of the 50%, or are they of the 80%, or is it all of them? And I highly doubt it's 100%. It may be more than 1%. But I don't think we have any good feel for where it is in there. And that's the part that makes it very difficult sometimes. When you don't have another source of information that is a little bit, right now we really have on both sides, it's showing you only the huge amounts of violence and all that. So we're not getting the big picture. And I think that's something we need to understand when we watch the news in general. Sometimes it's very difficult to understand what's going on past that little disaster area.
Yeah, and also understand what is the agenda going on. What is
exactly? And the agenda is critical. All of this is being driven by an agenda.
Yeah, all sides involved.
This, whether it be the murders themselves that took place, the terrorist attack, or the media outlets that are showing it. Everybody has an agenda in this, and they're all going to play into their own agenda. And then you have your agenda. You need to put your own onto it as well. So it makes it tough.
It does make it very tough. And I think that really is the part of it. But what makes it easier is if you really do your own homework, try to get information from as many sources as you can, and try not to get the Twitter view of it. Don't get the 140 characters. Actually, at the very least, open up the article and skim it and look for what are the keywords of what's going on. I mean, I usually suggest, people are bad about not reading entire articles. So actually read the whole thing and understand, try to look for what is the perspective of the person writing this piece or speaking on this topic. What is their view of the world? And how can I develop filters to understand what is their version of reality? Because the truth is, we all have our own version of reality. People love to say, "Oh, I'm a realist," or you're not living in reality. And the truth is, in truth, we do all have our own individual versions of reality because it's brought in, and it's the information that comes in through our eyes, ears, and skin, and whatever other senses you want to tack onto that. All of that information goes through mental filters that have been built and instilled in us throughout our entire lives. And so our perspective and our understanding of reality, that then becomes reality for us. For each person, it's different. Even if we think so close, we're like Twinkies. It's hard to tell us apart. We still have some difference of a reality of what's really going on.
Yeah, and just one last note on that, and it's my last plug, I promise. If you want another opinion, and you are willing to read the whole article, and you want to get a different view of the world and what's going on there, I do recommend Reason.com. And the reason for that is, they are a libertarian rag, so they have their own view as well, but they're going to give you the third one that you're not going to get through the Fox News, the CNN, or the MSNBC.
Yeah, I think they typically are a very good source of news as far as giving a third view. Because like we were talking about John Stossel, who's very much a libertarian on Fox, but I think he's the only one. Like there's other people that call themselves libertarians, and not to say that they're not libertarians, but what's happened a lot in the conservative arena or the right-wing arena is that people that are irritated with the Republican Party just started calling themselves libertarians because they still want to be conservative, but they don't want to be part of the Republican Party. But I don't even know that they really understand what they even mean by calling themselves libertarians. But yeah, Reason is a great place to get a third opinion and view.
Right. Yeah. And it was just, a way for you to get one more view, which helps. I find the more points of information you have, the better, the easier it is to rationalize across all of them and come out with your own.
And that, I think, is the most important part of all of this, is form your own opinion. Be informed, get your own information, and compare it against everything else. And finish off by forming your own opinion. Or have no opinion at all when you're all done. It's up to you. And with that, we wrap up episode 85. Thank you for joining us today. Help us bring you better information about preparedness. If you have an author, blogger, podcaster, video blogger, or any other person you'd like to hear on the show, we'd love to have them on. Contact the person you'd like to hear on the show and tell them about In the Rabbit Hole Urban Survival Podcast. Tell them to visit intherabbithole.com/guest. Don't wait. Do it today, and let's grow the show together. Do you have something to say about survival and preparedness? In the Rabbit Hole is looking for people that are passionate about all topics of survival to become blog contributors. Don't sit on the sidelines. Share your knowledge with others today. Contact us through the feedback form on the site and let us know you'd be interested in becoming an In the Rabbit Hole contributor. From the Lone Star State, till next time, stay safe and sound.